Okay, so I am so excited to introduce the Raven Chapbook poets. There's something that maybe a few of you know, that Zoe and I have also been published by Raven Chapbooks, and so there's this great kinship here tonight. There are 5 of us, and it's really wonderful to introduce these 3 amazing poets. We heard them today at the New Horizons Centre in James Bay, and they were so good. You're going to love them. So first up is Ian Thomas, who is a biologist and a poet with a lifelong passion for the ecosystems and wildlife of the BC coast. He currently works with the Ancient Forest Alliance, a non-profit that strives to protect BC's endangered old growth forests, which is super important. Green Islands is Ian's first published book, and it's also the winner of the 2023 Raven Chapbook Awards. Please welcome Ian Thomas. You're going to love it. Is that about right?
I think so. Can everyone hear me?
Yeah.
Maybe? Okay, perfect. Wonderful. Well, thanks for the introduction, and what a delight to be here with all of you. Yes, this book is called Green Islands, Poems from the Great Bear Rainforest. And the Great Bear Rainforest is on the central and northern coasts of the mainland of BC. And it is the largest intact temperate rainforest on Earth. This incredible area. I spent my time there. These poems were all written in the territory of the Heiltsuk First Nation near the community of Bella Bella. And when you look at the Great Bear Rainforest from above, either on a map or from the air, one of the things that is extraordinarily evident is how convoluted the landscape is. There's thousands of islands, inlets, channels. It's just sort of these incredible textures that to my eye is sort of reminiscent of the human brain. Like the human brain, these islands and channels and points of connection between sea and land are these sort of theaters of interconnection and exchange. And one of the ways that forms that takes with the ocean connecting to the land that was quite striking to me was the way that the otters are kind of bringing these marine nutrients onto the earth, onto the land, and feeding the terrestrial ecosystems as well. And that was the inspiration for this poem called Otters. Slick as raindrops down a slanted tarp, dog otters slip up a steep-faced island wall and spill into an open slat, all of them vanishing into the rock under a hanging cedar. But they can't hide their footprints. Wild lilies stream down their favorite trails, leaching their green from the whitened crab shells, the wing-like bones of chitons in otter scat. Sleek as if rolled and slicked in the throat feathers of a raven, otters slide up the steep faces of stony islands, burn paths through dense green crowberry, fatten roots of paintbrush and columbine with their earthy, pungent words. Otters work part-time as rivers for stony islands too poor to afford the real thing, bringing the atoms of the sea over sheer walls, entangling them in nets of lanky, beaked and stair-stepped moss. On these poor islands, a fragment of clam is like narwhal ivory. A crab claw is a tiny tortoiseshell comb. Wild lilies find the green pith under all that bleached out shell and strip it, harvesting again and again their wages from the bottom of the sea. This next poem is called Clancy Creek, which is a beautiful salmon-bearing river in Heiltsuk territory. Clancy Creek. After a long rain, I followed a new stream. Its soft glow split the forest's underwater gloom as it divided green from green. I crawled between tall ferns, creeping down my stream to its river riddled with heavy bullets of sinking light. I slipped through one window of the many-windowed river. Rapid-fire sunbeams dazed and dazzled me. The forest bled to a shadow against the long, quivering scald of Clatsy's waters. Unafraid then, I thought of the shadow men, the grizzly bears golden like the belly of their river in this fresh light, caught between their own music and the music of the water. I thought of the matter that passes through every thread in the weave, waiting centuries to become a bear. The matter that's so rarely finding itself, so in love with form, sticks to it and savors it, wallowing in bear shape, like a bee in a blossom bending, inviting the river, atom by atom, photon by photon, in to the great golden body of a bear. This next poem is called Orcas, and it has 3 parts to it. And the sort of progression of the parts is sort of getting kind of deeper into the orca's perception. So the first part is a human speaker speaking about orca whales. The second is sort of more maybe a stylized orca speaking back to the human world. And the third is a orca mother speaking to her calf. And I guess the sort of maybe central premise of the poem, or the idea the poem is interested in, is the way in which, as I'm sure many of you know, orcas perceive their world through echolocation, which means they send out a call, and the echo of the call illuminates the world around them. So of course, we're all here celebrating voice, and this is an animal that uses voice to see the world around it. Orcas. First come dark chisels, carving a space out of the unworked blue. Then emerge the faces, clustered in a single frame, hugged close by an umbilical net, holding them to the matriline, traveling cloud to cloud. It must be so clear to these sea people, the voice of each little island. This choir of islands is a webwork of lighthouses, steering them to the gathering salmon at the green heart of the maze. They carve inwards. A long, luminous scar of sound glows in the quiet places between booming islands and the seething rivers of salmon that flow up mountains in a long curve, returning to their own headwaters, bringing rain. 2. Every wave-washed island clangs with the notes of a different raven. Every stream chatters and churs with the chimes of a different wren. And those big rivers sound so close, like the blood in your ear. No wonder all these boys have big pink erections as they line up, poised at the warm lips of the islands, at their soft freshwater tongues. Where there are silences, we fill them with light. We fill each other's bodies with light, shining lamps inwards on those inside us who are poised at the mouth. We call them outwards, but they call us inwards, inward to the music of blood in the mother. 3. Light is our mother tongue. Speaking for us is seeing. And there, little one, in that glacier-hacked gorge, gagged at the throat with pale plumose anemones, you see a pugged, double-jowled lingcod. You see the dull wicks of kelp snug to their holds, come suddenly to light. Your voice alone igniting them. And this final poem is called Wolf at Grief Bay. I'll say Grief Bay is a real place, not just a state of mind. It is on the southern tip of Calvert Island. and it overlooks the Sorrow Islands, sort of a beautiful kind of melancholy location. And this poem is a bit about grief, and it's definitely quite a bit about a wolf. Wolf at Grief Bay. Nearly a year of walking, nothing it seems but walking, leaving tracks and tracks, a long detour through mist and rain. Nearly a year of walking, and here at the Sorrow Islands at Calibert's southern tip, last night, a black wolf came down from nameless dark green hills, rustling through dense salal on a nameless dark green path. She emerged beside me on the beach. She had been walking for years through valleys no human eye has ever seen, drinking from dark hemlock-steeped streamlets and deep blue tarns, freckled with lobelia and buckbeam. The beach she saw as one no human eye has ever seen. The wolf I saw as one no wolf has ever seen. Looking at me, she saw the face of no one I've ever known. After noticing me, she vanished back into that dark green wall. I waited, but didn't see her again. So I pulled loose from all that blue-eyed grass, paintbrush and yarrow, pulled loose from the darkening hills, the fading embers of sky and sea, jogged back to my tent, my mind submerged in a wordless, speechless place. I've been walking for a year to arrive here, leaving tracks and tracks, staring back obsessively over what I've printed. I woke up this morning and wolf prints were everywhere, ribbons of them streaming around our cluster of tents. My own tracks, gone or faded, I couldn't see them. Only wolf writing from when they passed us in the night. Their tracks everywhere in this gray light. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ian. What a treat to hear you twice in one day. I did. I would love to welcome Marlene Grund Maître, and her poetry chapbook Cancer's Rogue Season was published in 2020 by Frog Hollow Press. Her work has appeared in many literary journals, including in 10 anthologies. She's won Freeform Magazine's poetry contest, the Federation of BC Writers Poetry Contest. She's had work longlisted for Best Canadian Poetry, has been nominated for a National Magazine Award, and has had a poem chosen by the League of Canadian Poets for Poem in Your Pocket for National Poetry Month. She's currently on the board of the Planet Earth Poetry Reading Series Society, and she'll be reading from her new chapbook, Wild Kin. Please welcome Marlene.
Thank you, hometown crowd. This collection of poems, I describe it as orca-ridden, West Coast poems that speak to our longing to be deeply in connection with the natural world and the consequences of how far we are estranged from that world. Many of them are responses to my 25 years of early morning walks at Macaulay Point in Esquimalt. And let's get started. With Macaulay Point, a little history on whose history is publicly honored and whose history isn't. Older stories, older songs. 1847, Sailor Point. 1851, Macaulay Point. 1886, Fort Macaulay. 1985, Macaulay Point Park. Fog knows the old stories. From the lookout, it shrouds, then reveals the Lekwungen camp to the west, more than 4,000 years before Donald Macaulay's birth on the Isle of Lewis. They named it muckwucks. In the bay, they built middens more than 2 meters high. Shells, bones, utensils, dug trenches for war. Close to shore, they sang to the salmon, "Thank you, elder brother. Come, elder brother." Between 2 canoes, they strung reef nets of stinging nettle, tied seaweed for camouflage. The land now the Anglers Association parking lot and launch. To the east, on the rocky spit, military history. Fresh signs stand at attention amid crumbling batteries built to thwart enemies who never arrived. Trailered motorboats file down to the launch, pulled by trucks called Explorer, Ranger, Ram. You can save your hands for the end if you like. I'll read what is actually the first poem in the book. Intertidal. Estranged from my species, I walk a wild beach at low tide. Among the leaking cockles and tattered kelp, a bracelet of bitter cherry bark. I slip it over my wrist. By evening, sleeves of bark on both my arms. At dawn, my body sheathed. I breathe as tree through pores. My hair branched, fruit laden. Some part of me cannot return now to my kind. Alone at night, I open what were once my hands, the blossom spring in clouds of white and gold. And in the next poem, we move to a wilder beach and also do a little time traveling. The word jotaku is in this poem, and it's a traditional Japanese method of printing fish, as on the cover of my book. Vanishing point. She finds the last Chinook washed up on Sombrio Beach, carries it home to ink its body, cover with rice paper. Blue jotaku. Her hands stroke the scales and ridges, lift the prints. By nightfall, a ghost school of Chinook shimmers on every wall. In home's uncharted depths, she wakes underwater, pierced by an orca call, a pulse beat of mourning as the last cow and calf glide through the bedroom, drawn by hunger to the phantom salmon. She will wake 5,000 years ago on a Norwegian shoreline, Mesolithic woman, the first carver of whales on rock. There are 3 or 4 Vancouver Island rivers and streams mentioned in this poem, and the year that I wrote it, they were in a condition of severe drought, and the measurements were the lowest they'd ever been. And also the poem mentions the Slims River, which was in the Yukon. Her voice a forge. A bald porcelain doll's head cradled in her left palm. A woman strides, jaywalks during rush hour on Douglas Street. She could be our Cassandra, earth the small orb cupped in her hand. She keens in the dialect of parched rivers and streams, Coxsila, Chemainus, San Juan, salmon. Keens in the dialect of river piracy. The Kashkawosh Glacier melts, the Slims River vanishes, its direction changed overnight. But the flow of traffic stops for no profit. Drivers honk, give her the finger. Insulated by steel and glass on a double-decker bus, We drift above our bodies, slumped on seats, orphans waiting to be claimed, skulls vulnerable as a newborn's fontanelle. The next poem is a ghazal, a contemporary version of the ghazal, written in couplets. It has a kind of internal logic, but makes quite a lot of leaps in between couplets. Ghazal number 8. They never have names, they're always numbered. What would I renounce to vocalize with orcas? Words so overrated. Twilight borrows black from my cat's coat, makes night's blanket. Dawn returns it, smelling of dusky lovers. Sea otters stash their shell-cracking rock in their armpits. My tools covered in rust and spider webs. Sky opens her black coat, weeps onto a silver gray diesel spill as it sinks. The music of silence plays my eardrums. In its alligator hide gown, the Gary Oak dances. Fleming Beach, my sharp edges soften, evening's velvet light. Water incarnate as a seal pup. A heron fishes, a stillness alien to humans. What feeds me? Lice-infested salmon. And back to a taste of a Macaulay Point early morning walk. Weathered. Macaulay Point path does not yield to the foot. Small stones probe my calluses. For a moment, a black lace cloud of sparrows blocks the insistent sunrise. And my reluctance to unfurl into this day softens. The Nootka rose, a brief pink flowering. Under its sweet fragrance, a sharp tang. Frugal coronary vessels carry blood to my heart. I am uncertain what grows in its soil. A rough wooden fence snakes around a fragile meadow. Official signs, area closed, species at risk, purple sanicle, dense flowered lupin. I lie down in tall grass, lulled by ocean stillness. What the Pacific brings us, in a certain light, its bruised skin, and Mesozoic origin in the shape of driftwood piles, plesiosaur, mesozoar. At low tide, exposure, small naked islands, weathered, beautiful as aging bodies are. At high tide, certainty, water will have its way with us. And for the final poem, it takes place at Macaulay Point on a rather manicured area called Buxton Green. It mentions one of the famous Pacific shipwrecks. And also, I think it's about how thin the veil is between the living and the dead. The crossing. I walk past 9 bolted down steel picnic tables, facing away from each other on Buxton Green, and listen for the arrival of those who died at sea, mothers, their children, from the shipwrecked steamer Valencia. Their presence moon-washed, their language tidal, fraught with undertow, a tongue of murmur, ripple, and surge. Struck mute, crows in black cassocks strut and bow. From water, the dead have learned how to cross an arduous threshold. Thank you.
That was amazing, Marlene. Thank you. Marlene was telling me or reminding me earlier on that these three amazing poets have read 3 times in 24 hours. It's quite a feat. So Susan, here's your last reading in 24 hours. Susan McCaslin, who lives outside Fort Langley, taught English and creative writing at Douglas College for 23 years. She has published 16 volumes of poetry and has a new volume coming out in September of this year titled Consider. Susan's central passions are walking in nature and receiving poems. She'll be reading from her new chapbook, Sentient Stones. Please welcome Susan.
Thank you, Karen. I may need some adjustment with the mic. I'm not sure. You decide what.
That's pretty good, isn't it?
Is that good?
Yeah.
Oh, good. Okay, so I'm reading from Sentient Stones and this beautiful cover, and the work that Marlene Hayes does is really quite wonderful with these chapbooks. And I'm going to begin with a poem about an ammonite. And I think the poem explains what an ammonite is, so I won't go into that. But the book begins and ends with an ammonite poem. And that's what's on the cover. Mon ami. Sometimes when lying awake, anxious, sleepless, I cup my hands around a polished ammonite, picked up at a new age store that holds a fossilized creature, spiraling fetus, couched once in silty sandstone, who fell to the seafloor millions of years ago, chambered wayfarer, golden ratio. At first, the rocked beam is cold, but warms in the heat of my hands, cupped in prayer position around her form. Soon I drift to sleep, spun deep into dream time, where her silent voice softly sings. In dying we live, in living die. Your time and mine, a single sentient circle. Rocks and stones don't bluff. Meteorites from shattered asteroids are shuttling their way to planet Earth. Limestone deposits embedded in cliffs pulse in quantum silences. When we peer into space through Gaia's skirts, stars in faraway solar systems may have already disappeared into formless black holes. Planets that once rotated around suns could be incubating, not holed up forever, but dying alive to emerge from the dark tunnel's other side, kicking like newborns warmed in their mother's arms. And I'm skipping ahead here to stones in bowls, which I have around my home. In the house where I dwell rest blue bowls of rocks and stones gathered from riverbanks, oceans, beaches, kept lost, found, refound, forgotten, recalled. With each occasion of gathering, holding and releasing, a knot in my heart loosens. Words fall and fail before a piece of granite with a single, singular white stripe, white fleck of a knowing eye. And here's a blushing pink sandstone with a pointy nose found in a ditch, though I hesitate to anthropomorphize. A small gray circular stone lifted decades ago from a beach in Victoria rests in the center of my hand, waiting in solidarity to banish my fears. And this one's called Amethyst Under Microscope. Quartz queen, empurpled in geode, crystalline structure, reflective, revolutionary, evolutionary, effective without cells, yet vibrating, hibernating, flaunting her crystal lattices. Subtle shades of lavender, lilac, violet, calming, charming, disarming, healing, sobering, her vigilant eye, enchanting. And this is called Pictographs Floating in Granite. Pitt Lake, Pinecone Provincial Park, BC, where my husband and I often go canoeing or in a motorboat, but mostly canoeing to get close to the pictographs. We canoe the west side of Pitt Lake, one of the few tidal lakes in the world, unceded territory of the Katzie First Nation. Smoothed out boulders seize our eyes, granite outcrops sheltering mysterious faces, ochre red, faded forms. A stick figure with two single circles for eyes, oval body, 3 horizontal ribs, raises one arm displaying 4 fingers. Another lingers with a bird's head, curved beak, 3-toed feet, a stubby tail. Further on, image of a crescent-shaped canoe responding to moon's tug. Her tidal flows. What artist chose this site and why? Archaeologists suggest men and women worked here side by side, preserving myth, ritual, storytelling. Youth likely ventured here on vision quest, drawn by their guardian spirits, to places where rock and water stir and cycle. Deep time storytelling remains veiled in unknowing, protected by erosion and the rub of time. Yet silent, these images speak. And there's a little photograph of the pictograph, which you can't see from here, but there's a few images in the book. So, and I'm moving on to Stone's Mysterium. I haven't read this one on any of the other readings, so I'm going to try it out tonight. So many ancient stone cities and citadels holding history, prehistory, excavated, studied, open to tourists, yet still inscrutable. Consider the Great Pyramid of Giza, its missing apex stone. Was the top designed to be flat so astrologers could pace the summit studying the stars? Some say this vast tetrahedron was constructed of polished white limestone, its apex forged from purest gold, shining like a star, reflecting the path of the sun. Opinions diverge on the structure's age, built as tombs for the pharaohs 2,500 years ago, or by an older civilization. Some claim the builders learned technological magic from the Atlanteans. Some say slaves forced to lug back-breaking stones hoisted them into place, often dying young. Others claim 10,000 laborers lived in villages near the site, working long shifts, and the project took 30 years to complete. Deep time holds its secrets in matter's mysterium, opening chambers where life and death sleep intertwined. And 2 more. Marvelous stones. I'm 6 years old when my father decides to upgrade our driveway. ordering in a truckload of gravel that arrives one sweltering summer afternoon. A jumble of stones rolls from the box. Shovels disperse bits of granite, feldspar in shades of black, white, tan, and gray. Then suddenly, an anomaly, a milky white translucence catches my eye. Rare gems for Janie doll and me. Those are quartz, Mom says. Not like quarters, I muse, more magical in their sheen. Another, with a pinkish glow, shines across my visual field. I pluck the rose from its bed, warming the queenly being in my hands. And am I over my 10 minutes? A little, two more short ones? Okay. Alive. Epigraph. When I touch a rock, I never touch it as inanimate. Thich Nhat Hanh from Going Home. Do you know who Thich Nhat Hanh is? A Buddhist monk that came over during the Vietnam War and became friends with Thomas Merton, and I'm a Thomas Merton scholar as well. So here we go. A tree, air, the stars, the moon, says Tay. Everything is consciousness. Lattice work, linked fractals, laced, webbed interbeings, constantly transforming currents, chanting vagus nerve interconnections, notes falling into waves, waves cradled in oceans, buried blue riffs, rejoining wholeness, rocks rocking their tempos, rejoicing. And this is the last poem in the book. And in this one, the Ammonite speaks to me. And some of these lines came in a dream, and I wrote them down in the morning. It's not often that you get dictated to by certain lines, but then I put them in my journal and then craft the poem up later. So I think that's often the process. At least I like to keep doing handwriting. And I've kept journals for years. Ammonite song. My spiraling form has no beginning and no ending. It always was, is, and shall be. Infinity is a ledge from which you can never fall off. Time is an illusion that cuts to the core of small self. Love is unspeakable, but sometimes returns in bouquets of words. Who can compare wisdom sayings? It's not a competition. Thank you very much.